Hey everybody. So I want to talk about the Buffalo Sabres a little bit and the offseason that they're having. And I'm confused as to what Buffalo is doing. Is Buffalo still rebuilding or is Buffalo trying to be a playoff team? Because I don't know if they know right now, because I certainly, looking at the moves they've made this offseason, I certainly don't know what they're trying to do either. Obviously, back in June, they re-signed Jeff Skinner to this massive, way too big contract, 8 years, $9 million per year. Yes, he gave you 40 goals, but he's already proven that he doesn't consistently do that year after year, and he's only gave you 63 points. So I've talked about the Skinner contract when it came out. I talked about how bad I thought it was, how ridiculous the money was. $9 million a year for a 63-point player. It's just completely absurd. That's a horrible deal, but whatever. They signed it. They needed to keep their top goal scorer. They gave him a massive contract. He's not going to repeat that performance. I can tell you that already, but they kept their top goal scorer. Then they traded for Colin Miller from Vegas and gave up a couple of draft picks for Colin Miller. So that adds to, Miller's a solid depth defenseman. That adds to their defense. Then they traded a draft pick for Jimmy Vesey. So they're giving up draft picks here for players. Then July 1st comes around, and they signed Curtis Lazar. They signed Jean-Sebastien Dea. They signed John Gilmore. They re-signed CJ Smith. These are depth moves. These are borderline AHL, NHL guys. These aren't big splash moves. These aren't the kind of moves that make a team significantly better. I mean, Curtis Lazar, fourth line guy at best. Jean-Sebastien Dea, he's a border, maybe an AHL guy. John Gilmore, again, spent almost all of last season in the AHL. They re-signed Zemgus Girgensons, again, fourth line guy. Then they signed Marcus Johansson, and while that's not a big splash move, that's a solid pickup for the middle of that lineup. They gave him a 2-year deal at not too big of a cap hit, and I think Johansson definitely will help the depth scoring of the Sabres. And then they just traded yesterday for Henry Jokiharju from Chicago, and again, he's very young, unproven defenseman, but a young defense prospect first-round pick who could turn out to be a really good player, or at least get something out of him. But the point is I'm just confused as to what they're trying to be. They're trading draft picks away like they're not rebuilding anymore, but they don't have a lineup that you look at and go, wow, that's a playoff team, like they're good. So maybe they should still kind of be rebuilding. They finished last year 6th in the division. They were 33, 39, and 10. They missed the playoffs by a ton. I think it was like 20-something points they missed the playoffs by. They weren't good last season, yet some of these moves make me feel like they are trying to be a playoff team this year. And I think if you're a Buffalo fan, you want them to be making strides forward. You want them to be progressing, to be getting better. You want them to be making significant moves that make the team better and closer to a playoff team. And some of these moves, like bringing in Colin Miller, signing Marcus Johansson, moves like that make me go, okay, maybe they're trying to be a playoff team this season. But then they do stupid stuff like sign Jeff Skinner to this absurdly big contract. And then the other moves about, bringing these borderline AHL, NHL guys seem like just roster fill to me. And that's something you get with a rebuilding team. So which is it, Buffalo? Are you rebuilding still, or are you trying to make the playoffs? Because if I'm a Sabres fan, they now have the longest playoff drought in the NHL. Carolina made it last year, first time since 2009. Buffalo's next in line. They haven't made the playoffs since 2010. They have the longest playoff drought in the league now. This rebuild has been going on for almost 10 years now. It's time to start to see some progress here. 33, 39, and 10 last year is not good. This is a team that should be competing for a playoff spot by now, and they're not. And I look at some of these moves and I'm like, well, you're not really making any headway towards competing for a playoff spot. Some of these moves I think will help, certainly. But others, it's just, I'm confused as to what they're trying to do. Are you trying to just fill out a roster with fourth line guys like Curtis Lazar and Jean-Sebastien D, and borderline NHL defensemen like John Gilmore? Or are you trying to make a significant move in the standings by making your team that much better by bringing in someone like Colin Miller and bringing in someone like Marcus Johansson and making sure that Jeff Skinner stays? I'm waiting for. I guess I was. I mean, most of the big name free agents are all signed now. So unless they do something via trade, this is going to kind of be the Buffalo team that we get next season. I was kind of waiting for the big splash move from Buffalo. I was waiting for them to go out and sign a high-end free agent, a high-end goal scorer, or someone who would make a significant difference in their top six forward group or their top four defense, something like that. I was waiting for a splash move. If it didn't come in free agency, at least a trade. Had Phil Kessel would have been the perfect thing I'm talking about. Had Buffalo made the move to go get Phil Kessel out of Pittsburgh the way Arizona did, had Buffalo gotten Kessel, that would be something I would look at and go, there's your splash move. Buffalo is going for it. They are trying to make the playoffs next season. With what I've seen from them this year, I don't know if they're trying to make the playoffs or not. They stunk again last year. They've added a third line winger in Marcus Johansson and a bottom pair defenseman in Colin Miller. They've added some other borderline NHL guys. They kept Jeff Skinner, but he was there last year. He was probably their best player last year. Keeping him doesn't improve the team from where it was last year. It just keeps it where it was. I mean, I'm confused as to what they're trying to be. Is Buffalo trying to be a playoff team next year? Because if they are, they're not. If you look at what their projected lineup is, they're not. That's not a playoff team. Definitely not in that division. In that division, we have Tampa, Boston, Toronto, Florida getting better, Montreal trying to get better. Buffalo is not better than any of those teams. So you're looking at 6 in the division again next year. They have done nothing to make themselves better than any of those 5 teams I just mentioned. Tampa, Boston, Toronto, way better. Way better. Those 3 are miles ahead of the Sabres. Florida has added an elite goaltender, made their defense better, and added Brett Connolly this offseason. Florida's making a playoff push for next year. Montreal thinks that they have the pieces there to be at least a wild card team, and they only missed the playoffs by 2 points last season. Buffalo's not better than any of those teams. So what are they trying to be? If they're still rebuilding, why are they trading away draft picks for third pair defensemen and the 2 picks for Colin Miller and let's see as I scroll through what else did they give picks up for? They brought someone else in. I can't think of it right now. Jimmy Vesey. They traded a 3rd round pick for Jimmy Vesey. Why are they bringing in, trading picks for a bottom 6 forward in Jimmy Vesey and a 3rd pair defenseman in Colin Miller if they're a rebuilding team? Wouldn't you just keep your draft picks and keep working on the rebuild? But if you're trying to make the playoffs, aren't you making bigger moves than bringing in a 3rd pair defenseman and bottom 6 forwards? That's what I don't get. They're not making big enough moves to propel themselves ahead of the other teams in their division, but they're not acting like a rebuilding team either. And I think that's where my confusion is. What are the Sabres doing? Do the Sabres know what they're doing? This is year 10 now of rebuilding, or at least year 9, if not, of rebuilding, and I still don't know if they know what they're doing. It seems like they're a little bit lost, and looking at what they've done this offseason, I'm a little bit lost too at what they're trying to accomplish here. But anyway, that's just my thoughts on Buffalo and their offseason so far. I just don't know really what they're trying to do. But with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. We are on our road to 1,000 subscribers, so please, if you can help get us there in any way, please do that. It would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you guys soon.